Hi, welcome to the next episode of the Crypto Tracker Chronicles. Just loading up some equipment, going out to investigate some new evidence that I just gotten, but that'll be on another show. Today's episode is about Arla Williams. She's an investigator, researcher, and storyteller of Sasquatch, Bigfoot, and quite other few forest legends. We had an interesting talk with Arla the other day. She gave us her point of view on a lot of different things. We'll discuss her points of view on cloaking, Mindspeak, where these creatures come from, how long they've been around, and some of the other things that she's been doing lately. She's just got returned from an interesting trip, so it should be a good show. Hope you enjoy. Well, welcome to the next episode of the Crypto Tracker Chronicles. This is Leon Drew. My guest on this episode is Arla Williams. Well, welcome, Arla. I'm glad you could take the time out to talk to me.
Well, thank you, Leon. I'm sure I'm going to enjoy this.
I hope so. I know we've chatted before, and it's always been interesting, so I'm looking forward to it. For those people that are listening and watching this that don't know much about you, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I live in southeast Oklahoma. I've had pretty much a lifelong knowing about the Bigfoot. I had my first full face-on-face or body-on-body, I think, encounter when I was 6. And at that time, my grandmother started teaching me about them, and so I've never had a fear of them or anything like that. And, you know, that comes partially from the things my grandmother taught me about them and how I am supposed to be being in respect of them. And because, you know, they're pretty much everywhere. You're not going to go much of any place where they're not. And, you know, being respectful of them takes you a long way towards a good encounter.
Right. Now, when you were 6 years old, so you've had a lifelong experience with them, and we won't elaborate on how long that life's been. But
okay.
But now, when you say your grandmother taught you about these creatures, now, do you have a native background? Is that why that she knew so much about them?
Not necessarily because of a native background. That kind of factored into it, too. But she basically spent a lot of times in the woods, too. She grew up in the Boston Mountains in Arkansas, and there were 12 children in her family, and they spent every available moment that they had out running around in the woods. So she had a knowing herself. And I've got that one photo of her demonstrating how they walk, and I believe that photo was taken either in 49 or 50. That's 1940 or 50. And it very much shows that she knew how they looked when they were walking. She does have Cherokee blood. I have Cherokee blood. I have Cherokee, Choctaw. But I also have Scottish, French, and Polish. And the one thing that she taught me about that was to have respect for all of who I am. And if you disrespect any part of yourself, then you've disrespected all of yourself. So respect was a big thing in my teachings growing up. I was also allowed to think for myself about experiences, you know, that I was having. She called them another us. And what she meant by that was they were like us in ways, and then they were not like us in ways. And she always said, if there is respect between us, there will be no problem. So she knew how this was supposed to be, and that's pretty much how I grew up, understanding it that way.
Now, of all the stuff that you've experienced in all your life, what do you feel is the strangest or the scariest that you've experienced?
Well, if you're talking about the Bigfoot people, I've never really had a scary encounter ever. I've seen some pretty big Bigfoot down in the Kiamichi Mountains, the largest being almost 14 foot, and we actually watched him walk under a branch. So we went back down and measured that. So we know, pretty much how tall he was. But there's so much talk about this aspect of paranormal. I don't consider what they do paranormal because of all the things I've seen native elders do, which is very much similar to the things that people say the Bigfoot do. I know they use this word cloak, and that word is just, I guess, the only word that people could come up with to describe this phenomenon of seeing them, and then they disappear before your eyes. They're not in camouflage mode. They are just not there. And, that really messes with a lot of people in this because it is something that man has not proven, can be done, I guess. But there again, it depends on what you consider strange, and it's not really strange to me.
Right. Well, along those lines, besides the cloaking, there's also been a report of portals opening and the Mindspeak and stuff like that. Have you experienced any of those?
Well, yes. Of course. I've got one audio of one speaking to another. And in July of one year, I was out in the woods, and there was this particular young male who had come through the woods like a bulldozer. And he never was quiet or did anything slowly. And so one day I was out, and I heard him coming, and I thought, I'm just going to ask him what his name is. So when I heard him coming, I just asked out, I said, who are you and what's your name? And immediately into my mind came the word Rujusna. And I asked back verbally, Rujusna, and then I heard again in my mind, Rujusna. And so I got my phone and audioed the name on the phone because I didn't want to forget. I mean, that's not a normal name that I would hear, and I didn't want to forget it. So that was in July. Later that year, I had been doing some audioing, and the morning I got up, I got my recorder, got my coffee, kicked back in my recliner, and was listening to what I'd recorded over the night. And all of a sudden, I hear this very deep voice speak, Rujusna. And I come up out of the recliner. I was like, oh my gosh, I know that name, Rujusna. That's exactly the name that the one gave me into my mind. And, I didn't need validation of what he had done, but, it was in audio, and I was just like, wow, So, yes, I have had it. But the thing with telepathy, which is what Mindspeak is, we all use it to some degree. How many times are you with someone and you say something to them and they immediately go, wow, I was just thinking that same thing. That's thought transference going on at that time, which is telepathy. And we just negate it away and go, oh my gosh, that's quite a coincidence that that happens. Well, I don't believe it's a coincidence. I believe that we're catching thoughts.
Right, and and I agree with you on that. I've had some strange experiences along those lines. Doing some of the paranormal research I've had, I've experienced some things and some very interesting things lately. But and so where this recording was at, is that the same place where you're living now?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I know you just built your cabin and stuff.
Yeah, I did.
And now in that area, I know you have, for, I don't know if you care for the term habituation visitation, but I know you have a group or family, clan, whatever term you use for categorizing their groups, sharing the property with you. I know you have multiple encounters with other ones, and I remember reading the name Indigo someplace.
Yes, Indigo. And no, I am not a habituator. I'm the one that's been habituated.
Right.
They do pretty much as they choose, and that's how I like it. I don't ask things of them. I don't feed them to try to get interaction. I don't do anything with the purpose of getting interaction with them. Other than maybe we do some gifting, and the gifting is not like an ongoing thing. They may bring me something and I'll gift them back. So it's not about getting them to respond to me. They do that because of trust, and that's how I wanted it to be. I didn't want them to do something for me because I put food out. I wanted the relationship to build on trust and them choosing to do things. And I believe that's why I have had what I have with them, is because of that. Indigo he's a young male now. He's kind of been special to me because we've interacted for a number of years. He and my dog Wado were buddies, and but he is the oldest of the male children in their family. There is actually a father, a mother, an older sister. There was Indigo, one just younger than Indigo, I call Blue, who is a male. And then there's a little one called Baby Girl. And they pretty much go and come as they choose. I don't try to get them to perform for anybody. They amaze me when they come around and do things when somebody's here with me. But yeah, so, the thing is, like I said, I want our relationship to be based on trust and not for what I'm doing for them.
Right. Now here we'll probably place in that one audio recording that you had where you had guests at your house and they were howling back, and the gentleman that was with you sounded like he was pretty amazed. He was really enthusiastic about that.
And that totally happened. I did not expect that to happen at all. That was solely something that they did. He will tell you to this day that encounter changed him forever, and he still kind of gets emotional when he talks about it, and that's been a few years ago, that happened. So I had a friend here recently who he spent a couple of weeks with me earlier in the year, and it was kind of funny. He had gone out to go to the bathroom. I don't have indoor plumbing. And he was off down the trail, and here come Indigo running at him. And so he said, well, I decided, what am I going to do here? Well, he came back in the house. But, Indigo was a lot of people call it a bluff charge. I think he was just testing this friend of mine. And Indigo's kind of in that stage when the young males do that a lot.
So he's a teenage boy.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. And Indigo's about 7 foot, so he's not a shorty by any stretch of the imagination.
I imagine. So he's acting like a typical teenage boy, just kind of, puffing up and trying to prove that he's a tough guy.
Oh, the young ones, the juveniles and the young males, they are so much like us. It's really funny sometimes.
Well, speaking of like us, what's your theory on where their origins are from? I mean, do you think they're part human? Do you think it's cross? I mean, I know you're a very spiritual person, so I'm not sure.
Well, I believe that they were on this earth before we were. I believe that the Creator put us on here at a later time. They are so adapted to living on this earth and have continued the same as they always were. Man has changed, and why man has changed, that can be a big discussion. But I was always taught that they were here first, and that then we came along. I do believe, yes, that the Bigfoot people do have human DNA in them. It's kind of interesting because when people start talking about this human DNA in them, I like to ask this question. And sometimes people start backing up when I ask this question. But you can't have it only one way. So if the Bigfoot people have human DNA in them, would it not be reasonable to say that some humans possibly have Bigfoot DNA in them?
Oh, it's very possible. I mean, I know the report that came out, that's probably been close to 5 years now, that showed that all of us have like 18% Neanderthal DNA, most people with a European ancestry.
Yeah, so it can't only be one way. And that usually gets people to really start thinking because, a lot of people look at them as less than we are. And I certainly don't look at them as less than we are.
Oh, I've had face-to-face encounters too. And after my encounter with that female, there almost 4 years ago now, and just looking in her eyes, I have no doubt I'd put them on equal or superior to us in certain ways. I mean, there's calling anything less than you are, you're generalizing over all their abilities. Well,
exactly.
Referring to a dolphin as less than we are is like, well, let me see you swim like a dolphin. I mean,
yes. Yeah, exactly.
So it's a matter of perspective. And I'd love, and the people that say that, I'd love to take a couple of them and drop them out in the middle of the Pikes Peak National Forest for about a week, and let's see how they do. But
yeah, that's, and that's the thing. They've stayed pretty much the same. And so that tells me that they are perfectly adapted to this earth and who they are living with this earth. They're not trying to change everything to make it easier for them to live on this earth, which is what man did when man came in to living in homes and different things like that.
Right. Now, you're well respected in the Sasquatch Bigfoot community, and you do a lot of talks and presentations all over the place. I know you've talked to a lot of different investigators. Is there anything you'd like to see changed in the investigation community, and why?
I think, it's that age-old thing that's been going on since I came into this several years ago. And the interesting thing, when I was introduced to the Bigfoot research world, I kind of laughed and thought, why in the world would anybody be researching Bigfoot to try to prove they exist? That was so foreign to me. And then as I got into it, it was like there was these factions of people. You have to believe this way. You have to believe that way. And if you don't believe the way I'm believing, then, you're all kinds of stuff. And I will say that over the years that I've been in this, I have seen a lot of positive change in this. People are more open now to talk. I was pretty much on the fringe when I came into it, and I think I'm probably middle road now. So
that's scary, isn't it?
Yeah. We need to be talking and sharing with each other and not talking at each other.
Right.
And, the whole thing for me when I first came into this was about being respectful. I don't think I've ever gone off on anybody that I remember. I've tried very hard to always speak respectfully to people. I don't have to respect that person, but I do respect myself, and how I speak to them speaks to how I think about myself.
Right. And
so, the whole thing is to share with each other in a good way and stop all this. If science hasn't proved this, it doesn't exist. Well, go back 500 years ago and say the same thing and see what science has proven. I firmly believe that science will prove a lot of the stuff that people talk about. When will that happen? I don't know. I do know that one thing that's going to have to happen for people to truly understand what's going on here is to get outside yourself and let your ego go.
Thank you. That's the exact point. I was just getting ready to make that point. You hit the nail right on the head. When I've talked to people, and first thing I hear when somebody says, "Well, I'm an expert at this," that's when I stop listening. None of us are experts.
Yeah. Well, I can guarantee you, I am no expert in this. And yes, I have a lot of years of knowing about them, but there is so much more to know, and where that leads me is back to myself and how I'm doing this and what I'm learning about myself as I get into this. And that's what I truly believe that all this is about. Yeah, we're learning about them, but in the end, it's going to be about us and how we do this and how we approach it.
Right. Now, you just got back from one of your adventures, and you had a pretty interesting trip and met with some interesting people. Would you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was fun. We went to Kansas first, and I did a little workshop up there, and then got to have lunch with my good friend Scott Nelson. And then we went on to Washington and went to eat lunch with my good friend Bob Gamblin. And then we went on to the Hood National Forest in Oregon and spent a few days. It was amazing there. Footprints, calls, everything. It was just like almost like they were happy, to see us. And it sleeted on us, so that was a little cold. And then we went to Washington in the Wind River area, which is a magical place. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place, and met with a lot of really cool people, and we were there several days, and yeah, lots of stuff going on. We were treated to an owl serenade one evening, and one of the owls probably weighed about 800 pounds from the sound.
Wow.
And everybody just, when he did it, they were like, "Oh my gosh!"
Now, was that with Tom and Susan and Brian? Or
yeah. And oh gosh, Barb Shoup was with us, and Sandy and Lisa Devereaux and Sean and Randy Hunt. And I know I'm gonna forget people, but yeah. And Samantha, we had a big group of people. And that's where the drum video, the twist, came about. So, yeah, it was a fun time.
That cracked me up. Now, talking about Tom Cantrell and some of the stuff him and Brian, right? Is it Brian? Yes, Brian and Sue and all those guys find. They've cataloged a number of stick formations, or
glyph is what they're calling them. I always called them stick writing, for years. I found my first one that made me stop and think back in 1999. And it was at that point that I talked to some elders about it. And they were talking about symbols and things that were being left. And so the guys here have, done that with me for many, many years. And then Brian and Tom got the bug really bad, and it's not my thing to catalog all that stuff, but Brian was seeing a lot of things. I think one of the photos I sent you, it's of a purple jacket, and it has a little X on it, a little X made out of sticks. That happened in British Columbia when I was up there. And that happened right behind my back. And with Sue and Brian there with me, I had laid my jacket down and stood up and turned around to talk to Sue and Brian, and turned back around, and that was laying on my jacket.
Wow.
So, yeah, a lot of stuff are going on. Some of the things through the years you begin to see over and over, and depending on the context of those things, that's going to help you understand the meaning. The X, everybody says, oh my gosh, the X's stay out or don't do this or whatever, and that's not always so. They've used the X with me over the years to talk about friendship, family, thank you. They've been used in that context depending on what the situation was. And that came about by it happening over and over and over again. And, you knowing, well, what was going on at this time that this was done. They are big into it a lot more than, what I am.
Yeah. And I always the term I use for them is I call them sass runes, because they do remind me of the Celtic runes. And
yeah, they do.
Very much so.
And I'm going to jump off the cliff here and say something about their writings. I've seen some that are very intricate. I actually believe that this form of writing is something that they used before we came here. And so when you try to take any particular ancient writing like that to try and figure this out, you might get a skewed view of what's being said. You may pick up some of it, yes, but as a whole, it would be pretty hard in my mind to say, yeah, that's exactly what that means, unless you know what the context and how that was used. And plus the fact that the majority of what you find has nothing to do with us to begin with.
Yeah, well, that's where the human ego comes in. Everything has to do with us.
Yeah.
Now, with all your interactions and speaking to them and interacting with them, is there any reason why they wouldn't come forward into what we would call the mainstream to introduce themselves, I guess for lack of a better term, to interact openly with humans and allow, I wouldn't say, our scientists to examine them. That's not really what I'm trying to say, but it's about the only way I can really put it. To where, maybe they had a delegation that would come out and introduce themselves to all humans.
Well, I know that they do as they choose. I also know that they know what we're capable of no matter what we say. Man has proven time and time and time again throughout the eons that he's just really not very trustworthy. So they're going to continue to do what it is they do until man can get his act together, which it doesn't appear to me that might be any time soon. But, at the same token, they are interacting with people now on a level that a lot of people know nothing about. And that is because of the trust that's built. I've had so many people ask me, well, can you get me DNA? Can you get this? Can you get that? Can you get a better photo? Yes, I probably could, but I'm not going to. Because it's not going to be me that totally outs them to this world. That's the only thing I can say about that. Yes, I'm going to share with other people experiences, And that's because I'm connecting with other people and trying to help them make some sense of what's going on with them.
And you're careful who you associate with too. I know that. I mean, I don't mean that you're snobby to anybody, but I mean you're careful who you associate with. You build a trust before you start. You know who you can trust, who you can't, who you respect, who you don't.
Yeah.
Or,
but I've been fooled in that too.
Well,
30 years.
Yeah, we all have.
You know, that's okay, because that's part of what I was talking about of us humans. We are not very trustworthy. They know that very well, and they choose what it is they do. And, you know, if they decided to do that, then I would say that they understood what the ramifications might be. But, you know, for me, I do not want to be the one that does that.
Well, no. We talked about thought transfer a little while ago. That was the exact question I was going to ask you. If they approached you, would you be their representative? But you just answered that question.
Well, I am, in essence, a representative of them, because I do share my stories. If they came to me and asked me to do that, I don't know. I just really don't think I would want that to be something that was on my conscience. And I still have a lot of hope for us hairless humans that, you know, we're going to get this right. But, you know, we just don't give them a lot of reasons to trust us as a species.
Oh, yes. And I agree. I mean, with people that are hoaxing stuff, that where you have groups that are going out and trying to shoot one of them, and, you know, that kind of stuff, that just, no wonder they just, like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah,
no
you
thanks.
know, and so,
talk to you later.
Yeah, I'm like, I always say this, I live an oxymoron life, because I don't think that it is to their benefit to be proven by science. Now, that is my own thought. It doesn't come from them. It is my own thought from what I've seen. And yet, here I am out there talking about them and sharing things with people. You know, for a woman who was taught all her growing up years, you don't talk about them, you know, it's been that thing that I had to reckon with when I knew that this was what, you know, I was going to be doing. I had to figure out, how do I live with doing what I'm doing? And so I went to an elder and talked to him, and I said, you know, I don't want to out them. And what he told me was, you are not outing them. They have already been outed. So it is for you now to speak about what you know about them and who you know them to be.
Right. So, yeah, and so you're providing education and the pathway of trust and intelligent interaction. You know, don't try to treat them like a circus chimp or a zoo attraction. These are a brother, a sister, you know, they're family. And you should treat them.
They are.
Well, maybe treat them better than you treat some of your family.
Yeah. Well, Leon, you had said, you know, you were talking earlier about your face-to-face encounter with the one. If you didn't know about them and this particular one came out with a delegation, what do you think people would think when they looked at her?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I myself would, I mean, as I'm, you know, on the strange side of this too, would take it as nothing but a great honor to be able to be the one to interact with them that way. And that's kind of the way I've approached this since I've had my encounter. And it's also affected the other research I do on the paranormal side. That's kind of taught me the same thing with that, showing respect for all entities, no matter whether they're spiritual, physical, or something in between.
Yeah, I totally understand that, and that is the key, and something I hear from people over and over and over who have walked into this with an open mind to learn is that's what they will tell you. I've learned a respect.
Oh, very much so. And, you talk about it, it's become your mission in life to educate people on this. I myself have gotten frustrated with the whole community at different times. It's just like a giant senior class in high school. Everybody's, got their clique, and they're the only ones that are right, and information's not shared. There's so many places where, if we could share the locations people are at, where they're finding this stuff, and get other groups in there to increase the interaction, I think that would go a long ways towards, blending back into normalcy with this being. And I know right now the normalcy is that they keep away from man. Building the trust. And there's people that want to get legislation out there to protect them. My thought on that every time I hear that is I laugh, because protect them from what? They're protecting themselves.
Exactly. Us?
Yeah. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'2", 210, and was career military, so I can pretty well take care of myself all the time. But when it comes to something that's 9 feet tall and weighs 800 pounds, I'm like a little toy doll to them. They just pick me up and throw me around and just stand there and laugh. So,
oh yeah,
and then
that's true. Plus the fact that laws in themselves are not a bad thing, but how many laws have we passed to protect ourselves, and yet we kill each other multiple times every day, harass each other, and do all kinds of things, and we've got all kinds of laws.
Right.
Laws are not going to protect them at all. They actually do not need our protection. A lot of people say, well, we've got to take care of their habitat. What we've got to do is take care of our own habitat, and then we're helping them and numerous other things.
Exactly.
So it's not just about them. It's about us and what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Right. Well, we're going to have to wrap this up here a little bit. Like I said, I knew it wouldn't be hard for her to fill a program talking to you. Now, one question I ask everybody I talk to, if you could go any place in the world and do research or, go out on expedition with somebody, where would it be and who would it be with and why?
You're talking about looking for Bigfoot or whatever.
Or whatever.
Oh, whatever?
Yeah.
Oh, I would like to go to Scotland and check out Nessie and a lot of the things that are there that they talk about. It's such an ancient place. I would like to go to the Callanish Stones and stand there in the moonlight and listen and see if I could hear something. So, oh gosh, I don't know. You want to go, Leon? I'll take you with me.
Oh, heck yeah, I'd go in a heartbeat. I know when I was in the military and I was in South America and getting a chance to visit some of the ancient sites down there, it's just an amazing feeling. People talk about this feeling of electricity and around, and it truly is. I mean, there's special spots in the world that have a special energy to them. That's,
oh yeah.
It's almost, not necessarily could be recorded by science, and so everybody's like, well, that's just you being crazy. Well, if it's me being crazy, I want to experience that more because it was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time and all the evidence you shared with us. And you got any upcoming events where you're going to be doing your presentations at?
Well, I'll be going to Georgia. I have some small gatherings that I do that are pretty much invitation only, because, you know, it's not open just to anybody. And this is a group of friends that I've amassed over the years. We have so much interaction, it's like crazy. And I'm going there, and then I really don't have anything until next year, and then I'll probably be back on the road headed west. I want to go up into New Jersey. I've been invited up to New Jersey and to Maine to do some things. So, yeah, I just wherever the wind blows, I guess.
Yep, well, that's a nice way to live. And I know you just lost your best friend not too long ago, and yeah, I know that was a tough feeling because I lost one of my old friends that was with me for 13 years a couple years ago, but I've gotten a new one this last year, and she's just as quick to get into my heart as that.
Well, yeah, Watto she was my love and my traveler. She went places with me. And an interesting thing about when she passed, everything here stopped for several days. Nothing went on. No sounds, nothing until they did a glyph on her grave. And then it opened back up.
Because they wanted to pay their own respects to her, because she was a friend and a family member to them too, probably.
Yeah, she was.
Well, that's a really interesting way to end this. Well, again, I really appreciate your time and doing this with me. You're my second guest, and hopefully this show will let people know what's going on, enough people hear it, and maybe open some minds. Well, again, we're here with Arla Williams, and we want to thank you, and we'll be signing off now. Thanks, Arla.
You're welcome.
Have a great night.